On April 28th, 1982, Ruth Monroe, who was 61 years old, was found dead due to respiratory depression caused by massive overdose of codeine. Ruth was reportedly in good health when she arrived to Dorothea's home just over 2 weeks prior to her death. However, by April 25, she told a friend, "I am so sick, I feel I'm going to die." Ruth's death was originally ruled an undetermined overdose, but later classified as a homicide. On May 16, 1982, Dorothy Osborne, 49 years old, found checks, credit cards, and other items missing hours after Dorothea visited her home and prepared her a drink. Now, on July 1982, Dorothea was convicted of 3 grand theft charges. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison, state parole until March 21st, and her federal parole sentence was extended another 2 years until 1990. During her incarceration, she began corresponding with Everson Gilmouth, a 77-year-old retiree from Oregon. At the beginning of September 1985, Everson came to Sacramento with his truck and trailer and arrived at Dorothea's boarding house on September 9th. After serving only half of her sentence, Dorothea was released from prison, unfortunately, where she was picked up by Everson and Ricardo, who was a close friend who lived with his family downstairs at 1426 F Street. In October 1985, Dorothea wrote to Everson's sister, informing her that she and Everson were to be married on November 2nd. A short time later, Dorothea hired a handyman, Ismael Flores, for remodeling and asked him to build a 6-foot by 30-inch by 30-inch storage box. She agreed to give him Everson's truck and $800 as payment. The day after he completed the box, he returned to find the box was nailed shut. Dorothea asked Flores to help her take out the box, which now weighed approximately 300 pounds. So how they were able to move that, I don't know. They moved this to a storage location, but ended up dumping the box near a river about an hour away from Sacramento. On December 28, oh my god, that's my birthday, 1998, it was determined that Everson was the previously unidentified body discovered by a fisherman alongside the Sacramento River. On January 1st, 1986, Everson's body was wrapped in numerous plastic bags and covered with a 62 years old, moved into Dorothea's home. On July 20th, a potentially malignant tumor was found in James's colon, and he agreed to further testing, but Dorothea later contacted his doctor's office, notifying them that he had gone to Los Angeles indefinitely. James's body was found buried under a gazebo in Dorothea's yard in November, and toxicology reports revealed that there was fluorazepam and a few other prescription drugs in his system. July of '87, Eugene Camille, 58, was found dead in an apparent, it seemed that he had taken his own life after having overdosed on ethanol. Dorothea, who was Eugene's landlady, said that he had a history of different attempts. Dorothea was never charged with unaliving him, but he was strongly considered a possible victim of hers. On October 21st, 1987, Dorothy Miller, 65 years old, was placed upstairs in a flat, in Dorothy's house, and Dorothy's remains were later discovered buried under a slab of concrete near some rose bushes. And again, similar drugs were found in her system, and again, social security checks in her name were being cashed by Dorothea. November 29, 1987, Brenda Trillo sent a letter to the Social Security office in Sacramento accusing Dorothea of stealing her Social Security checks, totaling $3,500. Brenda met Dorothea in Sacramento City County Jail in 1982, and the two later shared a prison cell. After her release, Brenda moved into Dorothea's boarding house, where Dorothea helped her apply for Social Security benefits. Brenda claimed that Dorothea drugged her and called her parole officer, causing her parole officer to be revoked before Brenda received the checks. In February 1988, Alvaro Gonzalez Montoya, who was 51 years old, arrived at Dorothea's home. At the end of August, a roommate saw a man clearing out Alvaro's clothes out of the closet. He missed an appointment on August 29th and was last seen August 24th. Dorothea told several people that he went to Mexico to go visit his relatives. Social workers continued to attempt to contact him, and in September and October, but there was no response ever from him, and days later, Alvaro's body was found buried adjacent to Leona, and toxicology reports revealed the same kind of drugs that were in everybody else. March 9, 1988, Benjamin Fink, 55 years old, was sent to live with Dorothea. Fink's brother would always visit him on a weekly basis for 6 weeks, and by the end of April, Benjamin was gone. On April 29th, Dorothea received 12 bags of cement. That June, she had dug a hole next to the door of a metal shed, which was later filled in with concrete. In November, Fink's body was discovered in this area. November 7th, 1988, the police arrived at her house, and they spoke to John Sharp, who was a former resident of Dorothea's, about the disappearance of Alvaro, and initially John told police that he had seen Alvaro 2 days earlier. And you know what's so interesting? There was another case of this woman. Her name escapes